Hello everyone. Today in the subject F7 we will be talking about intangible assets. Now intangible assets falls under IAS 38. Let us first start with the definition of intangible assets. Okay, by the ACCA definition, intangible assets are identifiable non-monetary assets without physical substance. In other words, these are non-current assets which cannot be touched. Okay, examples could be, say, purchased goodwill, patents, trademarks, copyrights. These are assets which does not have any physical substance, meaning we cannot touch those assets. But those assets are present to give us benefits. Now, what is the recognition criteria? As intangible assets are also assets, this means that it must meet the definition of an asset. It must be controlled by an entity as a result of past events. And future economic benefits should be expected to flow to the entity. Now, once the criteria is met, then the cost of the asset can be capitalized in accordance with IAS 38. This means that now that cost will become part of our intangible asset. Okay? Now, what is the measurement of intangible assets? Initial measurement should always be at cost. Okay, remember, the initial measurement is usually one-time cost which we will have to incur to purchase the intangible asset. Now, subsequently, or you can say the next year, the subsequent measurement can be chosen in two ways. First one is your cost minus any accumulated amortizations. And we will also deduct any accumulated impairment losses. Or the other way we value our intangible asset is using the fair value model. This means that now we are going to base the value of our asset on the market value. Now, you might be wondering, what is amortization? When it means by amortization, this simply says that we want to spread the cost of the intangible asset over its useful life. Okay, now how do we calculate amortization? We simply calculate it by using this formula. Now, you might be wondering, isn't this formula same as depreciation? Yes, you're absolutely right. This is actually, you can say, the depreciation for intangible assets. But we do not use the term depreciation, we use the term amortization. Okay, now, where will amortization go? It will go into two places. The first one is, it is going to be expensed off in the profit and loss. And the next one is, we are going to deduct it from the cost of the asset in the statement of financial position. Okay, now, so let me just review what I said. Initially, we always have to value our intangible assets at cost. But in the following years, we have an option to either value it at cost minus accumulated amortization minus accumulated impairment loss. This is what we call the cost model. Or we use the fair value model, which is we will base the value on the asset on the market value. Now, if you want to base it on the market value or on the fair value, you must ensure that all your intangible assets are also based on this value. Okay. Now, there can be certain scenarios where the useful economic life of the intangible asset, or you can say the number of years which the asset can actually bring benefits to us. Now, in certain scenarios, it cannot be measured. Now, what do we do when we cannot measure the useful economic life? Okay? When the useful economic life of the asset cannot be measured, or it's for indefinite period. This means that it's forever. No amortization can be calculated. So what we do is we have to do an impairment test or an impairment review every year. Yeah? Now, when it comes to IAS 38, a very important topic is research and development. Now, what is research and development? This is very useful when it comes for businesses who want to produce new things. Now, many practical examples talks about the medical industry. When a company wants to produce new medicines, they usually have to do a lot of research first. Why? Because they want to ensure that the medicine can actually cure something. Or they actually want to know what symptoms can the medicine cure. Now, this is all what you call research. Now, what does development mean? Development means once you already know that your research can actually bring benefits to you, you will develop the product. Or you can say now you're going to make a prototype first before a mass production. Now, this is what you call development. So research costs, we are going to expense it off in the profit and loss. And development costs, we are going to capitalize it if it meets the standards of IAS 38. Okay? Now you might be wondering, what actually is the difference between development and production? Development means when we are first usually designing a prototype or we're testing a prototype, while production means we're now producing in a big scale. Okay? Now what if development cost, never mind, cut. Now, another thing when it comes to IAS 38 is a very common example of an intangible asset is goodwill. IAS 38 states that there are two types of goodwill. One is purchased goodwill and internally generated goodwill. Now, what is goodwill, first of all? Let me explain. Goodwill means basically you are buying the reputation of the business. Okay? Now, this is what we call purchased goodwill. This is very common when it comes to consolidation, when we are buying a subsidiary, we can also get the goodwill. Meaning we get their reputation, their brand image, and the view of customers towards them. This is what you call goodwill. Okay, now what about internally generated goodwill? This is basically an assessment or an estimate of our personal goodwill, our company's goodwill. Now, purchased goodwill, we can actually recognize it as an intangible asset. But internally generated goodwill, we are not allowed to classify it as an intangible asset. Okay, now you might be wondering, why is it when we purchase the goodwill we can classify it, but if we internally generate the goodwill we cannot classify it? Now the discussion states it like this: when it comes to internally generated goodwill, we cannot make a reliable estimate of the value of the goodwill or of the asset. Now, because we cannot make an estimate, this means that we cannot classify it as an intangible asset. Okay? Now, please note one thing when it comes to intangible assets, which I forgot to mention earlier. Amortization should start when the asset is available for use. Okay? That is it for your IAS 38. If you have any questions, please feel free to send an email to the address shown below. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to hear from you guys soon.